My family left for Paris after my accident, ignoring me in the hospital. We're off to Paris for fun. Don't worry about US. Hey there. Welcome to today's story. What are you up to right now? I hope you're ready to dive into a story that's both emotional and empowering. Let's set the stage. Imagine you've spent years carrying everyone else's burdens, constantly giving, fixing problems, and never really thinking about your own needs. But one day, everything changes. The family you've always sacrificed for asks for more, and you start to wonder, when is it my turn? Have you ever been in a situation like this? Ever felt like the world was just asking too much from you? Stick with me till the end to see how the main character takes back control of her life and walks away stronger. Oh, and I'd really appreciate it if you could help me hit 1,000 subscribers soon. It'll really motivate me to keep bringing you more amazing stories. Thanks so much, and let's jump into today's story. In the heart of New York City, where the skyline dazzles but the streets never sleep, I was living the life I always dreamed of. At least, that's what it looked like from the outside. At 28, I had climbed the corporate ladder at a fast-paced tech company, working long hours and earning a paycheck that most would envy. But all of that success came at a steep price. My life felt like a constant balancing act. I lived alone in a small but cozy apartment, my sanctuary amidst the chaos of the city. But my real burden wasn't the demanding job. It was the constant worry about my family. My mom, Julie, had just called for the third time this week about her bills. Every month, I transferred money into their account. Money I didn't have much of to spare. Then there was my younger sister, Sophie, who hadn't been able to keep a job for over a year after she dropped out of college. She spent her days either sulking at home or complaining about unfair job rejections. How did I end up here? It was supposed to be my turn to live freely, to pursue my own dreams. Instead, I found myself trapped between the demands of my family and the relentless grind of my job. After months of late nights at the office, tangled in conference calls and endless emails, I had reached a breaking point. The weight of my responsibilities felt suffocating. Work, the bills, and trying to keep the family afloat. My own dreams had taken a back seat for so long that I couldn't remember the last time I did something just for me. So, I decided it was time for a break. But not just any break. This wasn't going to be a quick weekend getaway to the Hamptons or a couple of days at some beach resort. No, this needed to be something bigger. It needed to be a trip that would offer all of us, my mom, Sophie, and me, a chance to breathe and hit the reset button. I wanted to make it a trip we'd never forget. A trip to Paris. It had always been my mom's dream to see the art museums and walk down the grand boulevards of Paris. And Sophie, well, she needed something to lift her out of the funk she'd been in for the past year. After all her complaints about not getting a job, not finding the right opportunity, and everything else that felt like it was dragging her down, I figured this would be the perfect change of scenery for her. I spent days planning, the sound of my keyboard clicking away in the quiet of my apartment filling the silence. My apartment had never felt more like a cage. Walls closing in, every inch of space occupied with things I didn't want to think about. But I pushed through the exhaustion, researching flights, comparing hotels, picking out the perfect Airbnb near the Eiffel Tower. I wanted everything to be flawless. I wanted it to be perfect. The thought of Paris filled me with a sense of excitement and urgency, like a dream that had been deferred for too long. I could already picture us standing at the top of the Eiffel Tower, the wind gently blowing through our hair, staring out at the vastness of the city. I could hear the chatter of tourists below, the distant hum of a city that never slept, and the soft clinking of coffee cups at a quaint cafe tucked away in a side street. I could imagine the three of us sitting outside at a bistro, sipping espresso and laughing about something ridiculous, letting the weight of our everyday lives fade into the backdrop of Parisian charm. For a moment, I forgot about everything that had been weighing me down. The idea of this trip, of giving my family a chance to escape, to create memories that weren't tied to the constant stress of our routines, felt like the light at the end of a tunnel. Maybe, just maybe, this would be the thing that brought us closer again. I turned to my laptop again, double-checking all the details. Flights, accommodations, museums, tours, I didn't leave anything out. I had picked out a charming boutique hotel just down the street from the Louvre, and I made sure to book a private tour of the museum for us. I knew how much my mom loved art, and I could already see the look of awe on her face when she stepped inside the grand galleries. I even researched some of the best wine-tasting tours in Paris for Dad. Although he probably wouldn't be able to join us, his schedule was always too packed. But for once, I wanted to make this trip about us. The three of us who rarely had a moment together that wasn't tinged with stress or financial pressure. I thought about the first morning we'd wake up in Paris. We'd have breakfast in our cozy Airbnb, croissants and coffee, and then step out into the crisp morning air. We'd wander the streets, the sound of our footsteps echoing on the cobblestones. I could see myself walking with Sophie, the tension between us, whether it was from her frustration or my own burnout, starting to melt away as we took in the beauty of the city. Maybe we'd argue over which street corner had the best view of the Seine, or who could spot the most interesting street art. But in those moments, everything would feel lighter, more alive. I needed this, but more than that, I wanted this for my family. I could already hear Mom's voice in my head, so excited about the art, the food, the culture. She had always talked about Paris, about walking through the Louvre, seeing the Mona Lisa, or watching a sunset from Montmartre. This wasn't just a vacation. It was a chance to finally give her something she'd dreamed of for so long. Sophie, on the other hand, was trickier. She had been so moody lately, constantly dragging her feet about job applications, criticizing everything from her lack of opportunities to the cost of living. Every time I called her, it was the same. Nothing's good enough. I'm not going to work in that place. I knew she was going through a rough patch, but sometimes it felt like she was dragging us down with her negativity. I hoped this trip would change that the magic of Paris would give her the fresh start she desperately needed. Maybe she would finally see that there was more to life than just being stuck in a loop of dissatisfaction. But it wasn't just for them. It was for me too. For the first time in ages, I wasn't planning just to survive the days. I was planning to live them. I imagined sitting in the shadow of the Eiffel Tower, sipping on wine as the sun dipped below the horizon, turning the sky a soft pink. I wanted that freedom, that peace. For years, I had put my own desires on hold, trying to be everything to everyone. It felt selfish, wrong, even to plan a trip just for us, but deep down, I knew it was what we needed. We had all been so caught up in responsibilities, in surviving, that we forgot how to simply be. As I filled out the booking forms and made payment, a strange feeling of relief washed over me. I was doing this. I was actually making this happen. For months, I had felt like I was drowning in work and family drama. But this was my moment to create something beautiful, something worth remembering. I could already picture us taking pictures in front of the Eiffel Tower, laughing together under the twinkling lights of the city, and maybe, just maybe, starting to heal some of the cracks in our relationships. Paris was waiting, but more importantly, I was finally doing something for me, and that felt like the most liberating thing in the world. The day before our flight, everything felt so normal. I was driving down the crowded streets of New York, lost in my thoughts as I made my way to meet a client for an important presentation. The usual buzz of the city filled the air, with horns honking, people rushing by, and the constant hum of traffic. I should have been focused on the upcoming meeting, but in my mind, I was already in Paris. I could almost feel the warm breeze against my skin, smell the croissants baking in the morning sun, and see the golden glow of the Eiffel Tower as we arrived. My head was already spinning with excitement. This trip was going to be the escape we all needed. It was meant to be our moment of freedom, a way to forget the stresses that had built up over the months. It was supposed to heal us. I thought of my mom, who had always dreamed of going to Paris, and Sophie, who was desperate for a change of scenery. It was going to be perfect. But then, without warning, everything shattered. The screech of tires was deafening, louder than anything I had ever heard. It was a terrible, high-pitched noise, like metal being torn apart. I had no time to react. One moment, I was gripping the steering wheel, and the next, I was jolted violently forward. My seatbelt dug into my chest, and the world flipped upside down. The airbag exploded in my face, and everything went dark. I don't remember much after that, except for flashes of light, voices calling my name, and the sharp, unbearable pain that seemed to radiate from every inch of my body. When I finally came to, the world around me felt foreign. The faint beeping of a heart monitor was the first sound that registered, slow and steady, a reminder that I was alive. But that was about all I could feel. My body was heavy, like it was no longer mine, like I had been transported into a shell that didn't fit. Every part of me ached in ways I couldn't describe. It wasn't just physical pain. It was as if my body was screaming for attention, but all I could do was lie there, paralyzed by exhaustion and injury. The first thing I saw when I opened my eyes was the white ceiling above me, the sterile, cold room, the hospital smell of antiseptic and sterile sheets. I tried to sit up, but the pain was unbearable. My chest felt like it was being crushed under a weight I couldn't move. I reached up to touch my face and winced. My skin was stiff, and there were bandages wrapped around my arms, legs, and neck. A soft, rhythmic beep from the heart monitor accompanied my disorientation. It was a strange, surreal feeling to wake up like this, disconnected from my own body, but acutely aware of the pain. And then I saw her, Mom. She was sitting by my bed, her face pale and exhausted, her eyes red from crying. She looked so different. Her usual warmth was replaced by something colder, more distant. The lines around her eyes were deeper, like they had aged overnight. She wasn't crying now, but I could see the sorrow in her expression. Her eyes flickered up when she noticed I was awake, but there was no immediate relief in her face, just a kind of blankness, as if she was looking for something in the sterile walls of the room. "Sweetheart," she whispered, brushing my hair away from my face with a tenderness that almost felt automatic, as if it had been a script she had rehearsed for a while now. There was something detached in her voice. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to feel comforted, but the words didn't reach me. They were empty. I tried to speak, but my throat was dry, and my words came out in a weak rasp. "Is everyone else all right?" I whispered, the pain in my chest making each breath feel like it would break me apart. For a long moment, Mom didn't answer. She hesitated, her gaze dropping to the floor. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft, like she was trying to protect me from the truth. "Yes," she said, her eyes meeting mine again. "Everyone else is fine, but we need to cancel the trip. We'll just have to reschedule it." I nodded slowly, trying to wrap my head around her words. Of course, we had planned this trip for months. I had put everything into it. It was supposed to be our escape, our opportunity to finally relax, to leave everything behind. But now, after this accident, the trip seemed so far away, so out of reach. I expected her to say more, to offer comfort, or even show some sign of disappointment. But instead, she spoke again, her tone disturbingly calm. "Actually, we think we should still go. You can rest here and we'll take Sophie with us." Hey, are you finding the story interesting so far? If you are, make sure to subscribe to the channel so we can continue the adventure together. The best part is just ahead. I lay there in disbelief, my body stiff and aching, as I listened to my family casually discussing their upcoming trip. It felt like I had been transported to another world, one where I wasn't even present, one where the pain in my body and the devastation in my heart didn't matter. They spoke in calm, almost indifferent voices, as if I weren't lying in a hospital bed just inches away from them, recovering from surgery after a major accident. Couldn't wrap my head around it. My thoughts raced, but everything felt blurry and distorted. This was a trip I had planned. I had researched the best hotels, booked every tour, and paid for everything in advance, all to create the perfect experience for us. I had spent countless hours, weeks even, organizing every detail down to the smallest things. The perfect place to stay, the restaurants we would visit, the museums we'd explore. And now I was lying here, in this sterile, cold room, while they made vacation plans without me. The conversation continued as if it were the most normal thing in the world. But to me, it felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I could feel the anger rising up, bubbling inside me like a storm ready to break free. The hurt was sharp, biting at my insides, as I heard my mom's voice rise in excitement about the trip they would soon take. The very trip I had arranged for all of us. The trip I had worked so hard for. "Maybe we should go shopping for new outfits for Paris," Mom said, her voice a little too bright, too happy. "Sophie, you'd look amazing in that red dress from the boutique on Fifth Avenue. Don't you think?" Sophie giggled, and I could almost hear the twinkle in her voice as she agreed. "That sounds perfect. I can't wait to relax and see the sights. I've really been needing a break from everything." She spoke as if everything had been decided already, as if I didn't even exist in this equation. And that's when it hit me. Mom then said, "Sophie really needs this break too. She's been through a lot." The words were so casual, so dismissive. They stung in a way I couldn't describe. The sheer nonchalance of the moment made everything more painful. My heart sank. That was it. The moment I realized I wasn't just being abandoned. I was being replaced. The anger flared in me like wildfire, but beneath it, there was something else. Something more painful, more profound. A deep sense of betrayal. I had always been the one to hold everything together for them. I had been the one who took care of their bills, their problems, their needs. I had been the fixer, the one they turned to when life was hard. And now I was lying here, a broken version of myself, and they were talking about leaving me behind to go on the vacation I had organized. My thoughts began to race, and I couldn't stop them. I thought about everything I had done for my family, the sacrifices, the hours spent making sure their lives were easier, the countless times I put my needs second, my desires at the back of my mind, always putting them first. I had given up so much for them, and now it felt like none of it mattered. Sophie, with her inability to hold down a job, her endless complaints about the world not being fair to her, and her total disregard for the work I had put in to make this trip happen, was getting the reward. Sophie, who hadn't contributed a thing to the family's well-being in months, was the one who would get to enjoy the fruits of my labor. I couldn't stand the thought of them going off to Paris without me. It felt like the ultimate betrayal, like my own family had chosen to move on without me, like I was an afterthought, a footnote in their plans. I had given everything to make this trip perfect for them, and in return, they were just going to leave me here, in this sterile hospital room, forgotten. And in that moment, I made a decision. Once they left, I would cancel everything. Every hotel reservation, every tour, every flight, everything that I had carefully planned to make their trip perfect. I wasn't just canceling a vacation. I was canceling the expectations they had of me to always be their fixer. The one who could never say no. The one who sacrificed her own happiness for theirs. The more I thought about it, the more it felt like the only thing I could do. The only way I could regain control. I couldn't keep living this way, always giving and never receiving. I couldn't keep letting them take from me while I was left with nothing in return. So I would take back what was mine. I would cancel the trip. I would destroy everything I had so painstakingly planned. I imagined the satisfaction I would feel when I clicked cancel on the booking website. I thought about how it would feel to see the confirmation email for the hotel reservation disappear from my inbox. The tours I had organized, the private wine tasting, the guided art tour, I would cancel them all. I would even cancel the flights. I wanted them to feel what it was like to have the rug pulled out from under them, to experience the chaos of their plans falling apart, just like the chaos I felt inside. I wanted them to know what it felt like to be discarded and forgotten. And yet, I didn't feel guilty. Not a single ounce of guilt. Not anymore. For years, I had been the one to hold everything together. I had been the one to bear the weight of the world on my shoulders, carrying the family's burdens while pushing my own needs aside. But now it was my turn. I was tired of being the glue that kept everything from falling apart. I was done. If they wanted to go on the trip, they could do it on their own. I wasn't going to be their martyr anymore. I wasn't going to be the one they leaned on when things got tough, only to be left behind when they got what they wanted. I had done enough for them. It was time for me to do something for myself. The thought of them leaving without me felt like a weight lifted from my shoulders. I was taking back my power, taking back my life. For once, I was going to be selfish. For once, I was going to do something for me. As they continued talking about their plans, oblivious to the storm that was brewing inside me, I lay back on the hospital bed, the sterile smell of the room suddenly feeling less suffocating. I wasn't the one who was broken anymore. I was the one who had control. And for the first time in years, it felt like a relief. Once I was discharged from the hospital, I returned to my apartment, but it didn't feel like the same place anymore. As I stepped inside, the familiar smell of coffee and old books hit me, but it didn't comfort me like it once did. Everything seemed off, out of place. The apartment felt like a reminder of the person I had been, someone who had given too much and asked for too little. I could see traces of all the sacrifices I had made for my family in every corner of the apartment. The piles of bills I had been paying for my parents. The old photos of family vacations where I was the one organizing everything. The travel brochures of Paris that were supposed to be for all of us. But now it felt empty. The walls felt colder, as if they too had witnessed the weight I had been carrying for far too long. There was a sense of finality in the way the place greeted me, as if I was no longer welcome in my own home. It wasn't just the apartment that felt different. It was me. I was different. I had been to the depths of my own selflessness, and now I was pulling myself out, piece by piece. I wasn't going to be that person anymore. The one who was always the family's financial support system, their unpaid therapist, or their travel agent. I had spent years making sure they were okay, making sure their bills were paid, their needs met, their dreams fulfilled, while I pushed my own needs and desires aside. I had given them everything, and in return, I had received nothing but the hollow recognition that I was the one who always fixed things. But I was done with it. I was done being the fixer of everyone's problems. No one had asked me how I was feeling. Not really. They didn't care about my exhaustion, my frustration, or my dreams. They only cared about their own issues, their own needs, and I had become a tool for them to use. I was invisible in the ways that mattered. I was suffocating, constantly looking after everyone else while neglecting myself. I had to put a stop to it. The first thing I did was block their numbers. Every single one of them. Sophie's, Mom's, Dad's. I blocked them all. The familiar pang of guilt rose up, but I quickly pushed it aside. For the first time in years, I felt like I was breathing again, like I was no longer drowning in obligations that were never mine to begin with. I wasn't their support system anymore. I wasn't their therapist or their personal assistant. I was just me, and that felt like a weight lifting off my chest. I also stopped sending money. It was strange at first to have that freedom. I had always been the one to make sure the bills were paid, the ones to make sure Sophie had what she needed for her therapy, the one who was always covering expenses that should have been shared. But no more. I wasn't going to be their crutch anymore. It was time for me to stand on my own. At first, I thought it would be hard. I thought I would be overwhelmed with guilt, that I would second-guess my decision. But as the days passed, I found myself feeling lighter, stronger. I no longer had to answer to anyone else. I wasn't responsible for fixing their problems, paying their bills, or making sure they were happy. For the first time, I was allowed to be selfish. Felt like a rebirth. After weeks of reflection, I made the decision to book a solo trip to Paris. But this time, it was not for anyone else. It wasn't for my mom, who had always dreamed of seeing the art museums. It wasn't for Sophie, who needed a break. It wasn't for any of them. It was for me. I wanted to experience the city on my own terms. I wasn't going to just visit the places I had promised them. I was going to explore Paris the way I had always imagined it, without having to please anyone else or make compromises. I wanted to feel the freedom of walking down the Champs-Élysées by myself, sitting in a cafe and sipping coffee without any distractions or obligations. I wanted to go to the museums, not because it was on a list of things to do, but because I wanted to. As I clicked Book Now on the flight website, I felt a rush of excitement, something I hadn't felt in ages. I could almost see the Eiffel Tower in front of me, the streets filled with the sounds of French chatter, the scent of freshly baked croissants wafting from every corner. This wasn't just about Paris. It was about me reclaiming my life. It was about taking back the years I had spent giving everything to others, and finally doing something that was all about me. I started making plans for the trip with a sense of joy I hadn't felt in a long time. I didn't have to consider anyone else's preferences. I didn't have to ask if this was okay or if that was what they wanted. It was liberating. I made an itinerary for myself. Visit the Louvre at my own pace, take a solo walk along the Seine, find a quiet cafe in Montmartre and just read. I had no agenda except for my own happiness. It felt surreal at first, as if I were stepping into an alternate universe where I could finally be myself without apologizing. I had spent so many years accommodating others, giving up my own desires to fulfill their expectations, that this freedom felt both thrilling and terrifying. I wasn't used to it, but as the days went on, I began to embrace it more fully. I also started making small changes in my everyday life, things I had been too busy to do before. I spent my mornings at the park, walking in the fresh air, letting the sun hit my skin. I joined a local book club and spent my evenings reading books I had always wanted to read but never had the time for. I even took up painting again, something I had abandoned years ago when I started putting everyone else's needs above my own. Each small step, each choice to live for myself, filled me with a quiet joy that had been absent for so long. I realized that I didn't need anyone's approval to live my life. For so long, I had felt like I wasn't enough, like my worth was determined by how well I could take care of everyone else. But now, I knew that my worth came from who I was, not from what I could give. I didn't have to be the one to fix everything for everyone. I could let go of that role and just be me. As I booked the final details for my solo trip, I thought about everything I had left behind. The guilt, the self-doubt, the feeling that I was always the one responsible for everyone's happiness. I was shedding it all. This trip, this new life, it was all about me. For the first time in a long time, I could finally breathe without the weight of everyone else's expectations pressing down on me. And for the first time, I felt free. Knock knock. Now you're about to watch the best part of the story. But before that, make sure to subscribe to my channel so we can keep going together. Months had passed since I made the decision to stop living for others, to stop constantly fixing their problems. And now here I was, standing in Paris, at the foot of the Eiffel Tower, a small but victorious smile spreading across my face. I felt a sense of peace that I hadn't experienced in years. The overwhelming burden of the past year had finally faded, replaced with something lighter, more liberating. I had arrived in the city of light, not as a fixer, a financial provider, or a martyr, but as myself. The woman who had just begun to realize she didn't need to be anyone else's everything in order to be enough. For years, I had lived in the shadows of other people's expectations. My mom's dreams, Sophie's never-ending complaints, the family's demands. But standing there, gazing up at the towering elegance of the Eiffel Tower, I felt like I had finally stepped into the sunlight, free from the weight of everyone else's needs and burdens. For the first time in a long while, I felt truly alive. The city was bustling around me, but it was as if I was in my own world, one where I could take the time to breathe and just be. The air in Paris was different from what I was used to. It felt fresher, like it was infused with possibility. The aroma of fresh pastries, the vibrant chatter of the locals, and the soft hum of the city felt like a celebration of life itself. I was surrounded by a beauty I had always dreamed of, and yet it felt more surreal because I had earned this moment for myself. As I walked down the cobbled streets, with the sounds of Paris surrounding me, I felt the grip of anxiety loosen with every step I took. I thought about how, just a few months ago, I would have been too caught up in the chaos of my family's demands to even consider taking this journey. I had spent years putting everyone else's needs ahead of my own, and now I was finally living for myself. And it felt extraordinary. Later that evening, I sat at a charming cafe by the Seine, the soft golden light of the sunset reflecting on the water, the sound of the river flowing gently nearby, the rustle of leaves in the trees, and the clink of coffee cups filled the air. I sipped on my espresso, letting the warmth of the drink comfort me as I watched the world pass by. For the first time in forever, I wasn't rushing. I wasn't worried about what needed to be done, who needed what, or how I was supposed to make everything work. It was just me and the city, finally giving myself permission to exist without explanation. As I let my mind wander, a familiar vibration interrupted my thoughts. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. My heart sank slightly as I saw the name. Sophie. I had been dreading this moment, yet I knew it was coming. It was a simple text that read, "How could you do this to us?" Her words were sharp, filled with disbelief and hurt, but I didn't feel the immediate rush of guilt that would have consumed me in the past. Instead, there was an odd sense of peace in knowing that I was no longer tied to their expectations. I had made the decision to let go, and now I was reaping the rewards of that freedom. Before I could fully process Sophie's message, another text popped up. This time it was from my mom. The words were short but full of weight. "I'm so disappointed in you." I read the message and felt the faintest twinge of sadness, but it was quickly overtaken by a sense of relief. I wasn't angry with them anymore. I wasn't even upset. I had been prepared for this. They had expected me to always be the one who was there for them, no matter the cost to myself. But I wasn't that person anymore. I was learning that I didn't owe anyone my happiness, especially not the people who hadn't taken the time to truly ask about mine. It was in that moment that I realized something profound. Sometimes the family you choose, the friends who support you, the coworkers who respect you, are worth far more than the ones you're born into. Family didn't have to be defined by blood. It could be built on mutual respect, kindness, and understanding. And that was something I had been lacking for too long. The people who truly cared about me, who saw me not as a problem to be fixed but as a person, were the ones who mattered most. Not those who saw me as a means to an end. I looked out over the Seine, the golden reflections dancing on the water. It was a metaphor for my life, I realized. The river, full of motion but steady in its course, was like me. I had been tumbling in turbulent waters for so long, carried by the current of other people's demands. But now I had control. I could choose the path I wanted to take, the pace I wanted to set. No more rushing. No more feeling like I was at the mercy of other people's needs. I could flow at my own speed, deciding where I wanted to go next. This trip wasn't just about exploring Paris. It was about exploring myself. In the past, I had always defined myself by my ability to care for others, to be the glue that held everything together. But now I was learning how to define myself on my own terms. I didn't need to be the one who always sacrificed, who always gave. I was allowed to enjoy life. I was allowed to be selfish, and in doing so, I was becoming more of the person I had always wanted to be. For the first time in years, I felt like I had control over my own life. I could choose what was important, what was worth my time and energy. The weight that had been pressing on my chest for so long, the feeling that I had to fix everything for everyone else, was lifting. In its place, there was a sense of freedom. Freedom to live for myself, to make decisions that were good for me and not dictated by guilt or obligation. I stood up from the cafe, my espresso cup now empty, and took a deep breath. I was ready to experience the rest of Paris, not as someone who was always trying to please others, but as someone who was finally doing what she wanted. I felt a sense of peace that I hadn't known before, as if the last year had been a storm, and now, for the first time, I was standing on solid ground. I wasn't sure where the future would take me, but for the first time, I didn't feel the need to know. I didn't need a plan. I didn't need to be anyone else's savior. I just needed to be me, and that was enough. So, what do you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts and feelings on this story. Drop a comment below and let me know what resonated with you, or if you've ever been in a similar situation. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe, so you can stay tuned for the next story. Your support means the world to me, and it motivates me to keep creating more content just for you. Thank you so much for listening to today's story, and I can't wait to bring you more.